Listen to me. A year from now, your life will not change because you wished it would. It will change because of what you do today, not next month, not Monday, today. Because here's the truth. Most people avoid. You don't need a miracle in 2026. You need momentum, 1%, every day. That's it. This is not about hype. This is about discipline. This is about identity. This is about deciding right now that the old version of you does not get to follow you into the future. Motivation is the most overrated force in personal growth. People treat it like a requirement, like something has to strike them before they can move. They say, I'll start when I feel ready. I'll go all in when I'm motivated. But listen closely. Motivation is unreliable, emotional, and temporary. It shows up when conditions are perfect and disappears the moment things get hard. If your progress depends on motivation, your future will be inconsistent by design. The truth is, the most successful people don't feel motivated most days. They feel committed, they feel responsible, they feel anchored to something deeper than emotion. Motivation asks, how do I feel today? Discipline asks, who am I becoming? And that question changes everything. Discipline is not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or adrenaline. It's quiet. It's repetitive. It's showing up when your mind is full of excuses and your body wants comfort. Discipline is doing the work when no one is clapping, when no one is checking, when no one would even notice if you quit. And that's why it's powerful. Because every time you choose discipline over motivation, you strengthen self-trust. You tell yourself, I do what I say I'll do. That message compounds. Over time, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking permission to be great. You act because it's who you are, not because you feel inspired. Most people don't fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because they build their lives around feelings. When they feel confident, they act. When they feel tired, they stop. When they feel discouraged, they retreat. But feelings are weather, they change constantly. If you let your actions be dictated by temporary emotions, you'll never build anything permanent. Discipline teaches you to move forward regardless of the internal noise. It teaches you that discomfort is not danger. It's a signal that you're stretching beyond who you were yesterday, and growth only happens there. There will be days when everything in you says, not today. Those are the days that matter most. Because anyone can show up when it's easy. Anyone can work when they're excited. But showing up when you're drained, distracted, or doubting, that's where identity is forged. That's when you separate from the version of you that quits under pressure. Discipline doesn't remove difficulty. It trains you to walk through it without breaking. And every time you do, you become stronger than the excuse that tried to stop you. Discipline also frees you from the lie that you need massive effort to make progress. You don't. You need consistency. You need a decision that no matter how small the step is, you will take it. On low energy days, discipline doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence. 10 focused minutes still count. 1 intentional action still moves you forward. Discipline understands momentum better than motivation ever will. It knows that progress is built by stacking small wins, especially on days when quitting feels justified. That's how confidence grows, not from hype, but from proof. When discipline becomes your foundation, your life stabilizes. You stop swinging between extremes. You stop starting over. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You become dependable to yourself first, and that changes how you see yourself. You no longer identify as someone who tries. You become someone who executes, someone who finishes, someone who doesn't need to feel good to do good. That shift is subtle, but it's permanent. And once discipline is installed, motivation becomes a bonus, not a requirement. Most people dismiss small progress because it doesn't satisfy the ego. They want visible transformation, dramatic breakthroughs, instant results. They want the highlight reel without the daily grind. But the truth is, real power is built quietly. 1% doesn't look impressive today. It doesn't feel like much. It doesn't give you a rush. But it works on a level most people don't understand because small improvements compound. And compounding is not loud. It's patient. It's relentless. It's mathematical. When you improve just a little every day, you don't stay on the same level, you accelerate. And one day, you wake up in a life that looks nothing like the one you started with. Think about how everything powerful in this world grows. Muscles don't build in a single workout. Wealth isn't created in one paycheck. Trust isn't earned in one conversation. It's all layered. It's repetition over time. 1% is showing up for the basics when no one is watching. It's choosing water instead of soda. It's reading a few pages instead of scrolling. It's going to bed a little earlier. These choices feel insignificant in isolation. But together they create momentum. Momentum is dangerous in the best way. Because once it starts moving, it pulls you forward even on days you feel weak. Small actions also remove the fear of starting. Big goals intimidate the mind. They feel heavy, overwhelming, and distant. 1% feels doable. It lowers resistance. It says, just take one step. And once you take that step, you're no longer stuck. You're in motion. Motion creates clarity. Motion builds confidence. The mind stops arguing when the body is already moving. This is how small actions outsmart procrastination. They don't challenge your limits, they bypass them. And before you realize it, the thing you were avoiding becomes part of your routine. What people don't talk about is how 1% changes your identity. Every small win sends a signal to your brain, this is who I am now. You're not trying to be disciplined, you are disciplined. You're not hoping to improve, you are improving. Identity is built through evidence, not intention, and small actions provide daily evidence. When you keep promises to yourself, even tiny ones, your self-image upgrades. In 2026, something dangerous happens. A girl finally stops waiting. She stops waiting for permission. She stops waiting for validation. She stops waiting for someone to choose her. And the moment she turns inward, the world shifts outward. Because when a girl focuses on herself, she doesn't just change her life, she changes the rules of the game. Listen carefully. When a girl focuses on herself, she is no longer chasing attention. Attention starts chasing her. She no longer begs to be loved. She becomes unforgettable. She no longer explains her worth. Her presence explains it for her. In 2026, the most powerful woman in the room will not be the loudest. She will be the most grounded, the most disciplined, the most emotionally free. A girl who focuses on herself stops leaking energy into people who never plan to stay. She stops shrinking for comfort. She stops proving. She stops settling. And suddenly, her walk changes. Her voice deepens with certainty. Her silence becomes intimidating. Because confidence isn't loud. Confidence is unshakable. When she focuses on herself, people feel it before she speaks. Men feel it. Women notice it. The universe responds to it. She understands one thing very clearly in 2026. I am not hard to love. I was just loving the wrong people. So she redirects that love into her health, into her mind, into her goals, into her peace, and everything begins to shift. Opportunities appear where rejection once lived. Respect replaces tolerance. Alignment replaces chaos. She doesn't glow up for revenge. She levels up for freedom, because a woman who focuses on herself is not selfish. She is strategic. She knows her time is currency. Her energy is sacred. Her dreams are non-negotiable. And once she locks in, nothing stays the same. Not her standards, not her circle, not her future. In 2026, a focused woman becomes a force, and forces don't ask, they arrive. There comes a moment in a girl's life when she gets tired, not of people, not of love, not of effort, but of shrinking. She realizes that constantly explaining herself, constantly adjusting her tone, constantly wondering how she is being perceived, is exhausting her soul. Seeking approval once felt like survival. Now it feels like suffocation. And the day she decides to stop asking, something radical happens inside her. Her shoulders straighten, her voice settles, her eyes stop searching the room for reassurance. She doesn't announce this shift. She simply lives it. And people feel it immediately. Think about the girl who used to rehearse conversations in her head before speaking. At work, she softened her ideas so they wouldn't sound too strong. At home, she swallowed opinions to keep the peace. In relationships, she over-explained her feelings so she wouldn't be misunderstood. One day, she stops doing that. She speaks once, clearly. She listens without apologizing. She lets silence do the work. Suddenly, the same people who ignored her words begin to lean in. Not because she got louder, but because she got certain. Respect arrives when clarity replaces hesitation. In daily life, approval-seeking looks harmless. It's saying yes when your body says no. It's laughing at jokes that make you uncomfortable. It's replying instantly because you're afraid of being forgotten. But when a girl breaks free from this pattern, her time becomes intentional. She no longer rushes to prove her loyalty. She shows up fully or she doesn't show up at all. And that choice alone changes how people treat her. The world respects boundaries more than availability. There is power in a woman who doesn't explain why she rests. She doesn't justify why she needs space. She doesn't defend her ambition. She simply moves in alignment with herself. In a family gathering, when she chooses peace over pleasing everyone, she isn't rude. She is rooted. In friendships, when she stops carrying conversations alone, she isn't cold, she is balanced. People may resist at first because approval-fed versions are easy to control, but respect-fed versions are impossible to ignore. Consider relationships. The girl who once chased consistency now becomes consistent with herself. She no longer asks, "Do you care?" Her life answers that question for her. She stops overgiving to earn affection. She gives from overflow, not desperation. When she speaks, her words are measured, not emotional. When she walks away, she doesn't slam doors. She closes them softly, knowing that dignity is louder than drama. That quiet strength makes people pause. Some will rise to meet her, others will fall away. Both outcomes are victories. At work, she stops shrinking her intelligence. She doesn't say maybe when she means this will work. She prepares, she delivers, and she lets results speak. She doesn't compete for validation in meetings. She sits comfortably in her competence. Her confidence is not aggressive, it is grounded. And leadership notices. Opportunities find her not because she begged, but because she stood firm in her value. Respect follows those who respect themselves first. There's a shift in how she handles criticism too. When approval ruled her life, every opinion felt like a verdict. Now feedback becomes information, not identity. She listens, she learns, and she discards what doesn't align. She doesn't argue to be liked. She doesn't bend to be accepted. She understands a simple truth. Not everyone has to understand her for her to be right. That realization alone frees her from invisible chains. Even in the smallest moments, the change is visible. She walks into a room without scanning faces. She posts without checking likes every minute. She makes decisions without polling the world. She trusts herself. And trust is magnetic. People sense when a woman is no longer negotiating her worth. They feel it in her calm, in her boundaries, in her presence. Respect doesn't come from demanding it, it comes from embodying it. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. This is a woman saying, without words, I know who I am, and I don't need permission to be her. When a girl stops seeking approval, she doesn't become unkind, she becomes unshakable. She stops bending and starts standing. She stops asking and starts deciding. And the world, which once took her lightly, begins to treat her with the seriousness she always deserved. There is a silent shift that happens when a woman realizes her energy is not unlimited. For years, she gave it away freely, to conversations that went nowhere, to people who only showed up when they needed something, to situations that drained her but never fulfilled. She thought being everywhere meant being important. She thought saying yes meant being valued. One day, she feels the exhaustion in her bones and understands a powerful truth: her energy is sacred. From that moment on, it becomes selective, not scattered. In daily life, this shows up in the smallest decisions. She no longer answers every call immediately, not because she is ignoring people, but because she is honoring herself. She understands that urgency is not the same as importance. When she chooses when to respond, she takes control of her time, and time, when protected, becomes power. People begin to notice that her presence is no longer constant, but intentional, and intention commands respect. She stops pouring energy into one-sided friendships, the kind where she always listens but is never heard, the kind where her success is met with silence and her struggles with indifference. She doesn't confront, she doesn't explain, she simply redirects. She invests in conversations that nourish her mind, not those that exhaust her spirit. And suddenly, her circle gets smaller, but her life gets lighter. At work, she no longer multitasks herself into burnout. She focuses. She chooses depth over distraction. Instead of trying to please everyone, she commits fully to what actually moves her forward. Her attention sharpens. Her performance improves. People wonder how she does more by doing less. The truth is simple. Scattered energy produces scattered results, but focused energy creates momentum. In relationships, her shift is unmistakable. She no longer overextends emotionally. She doesn't analyze every message or overthink every pause. She stays present, not attached. If someone brings confusion, she doesn't chase clarity, she chooses peace. Her energy stops feeding uncertainty, and when energy is no longer wasted on confusion, it multiplies into confidence. She becomes selective with her emotions too. She doesn't react to everything. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every opinion deserves space in her mind. She learns the power of emotional economy. Where she once reacted instantly, she now responds thoughtfully or not at all. That restraint gives her an edge. Calm becomes her signature, and calm is intimidating to chaos. Even in social spaces, her presence changes. She doesn't feel the need to impress the room. She doesn't perform. She observes. She engages where it feels aligned and steps back where it feels forced. Her energy no longer leaks into proving herself. It stays centered. People sense it. They feel that she is not trying to be seen. She simply is. Her mornings become quieter, her routines more intentional. She chooses rest without guilt. She protects her focus like a treasure, scrolling less, comparing less, consuming less noise. She understands that what she feeds her mind determines the quality of her life, so she chooses carefully. Her energy, once scattered across everyone else's expectations, finally comes home to her. This selectiveness doesn't make her selfish. It makes her powerful. She shows up fully where it matters and withdraws gracefully where it doesn't. She doesn't explain why she needs space. She doesn't apologize for prioritizing growth. She understands that the most successful, fulfilled women are not the busiest. They are the most intentional. When her energy becomes selective, her life stops feeling chaotic. She sleeps better. She thinks clearer. She moves with purpose. People may not have constant access to her anymore, but when she shows up, she is fully present. And that presence is rare. That presence is valuable. That presence changes everything. She no longer lives on autopilot, reacting to every demand and distraction. She lives deliberately, choosing where her energy flows and where it doesn't. And in that choice, she discovers something extraordinary. When energy is focused, life expands. Opportunities align, confidence deepens, peace becomes her default state. There is a kind of power in silence that words cannot capture. For years, she believed that speaking constantly, explaining herself at every turn, and defending her choices would make people understand her. She thought her worth depended on how loudly she could justify her existence, how convincingly she could convince others to see her perspective. But over time, she learned a truth that changes everything. Silence speaks louder than explanations ever could. It is in the pauses, the measured steps, and the calm distance that her strength becomes undeniable. In daily life, this manifests in the way she handles conflict. Where once she argued endlessly to prove she was right, she now simply listens. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't counter. She observes. And in that quiet observation, she sends a message far stronger than any speech, that she is unshaken, unbothered, and in control. People often mistake silence for weakness, but she knows better. Silence is her strategy, it is her shield, and the impact is immediate. Her voice carries authority without being loud. At work, this is equally transformative. Instead of over-explaining her ideas in meetings or rushing to justify her strategy to colleagues, she presents with clarity and lets the results speak. She doesn't chase recognition, she doesn't over-elaborate to please the room. And when her suggestions succeed, It isn't her words that prove her value, it is her consistent actions. Her silence about trivial disputes, petty politics, and meaningless debates signals a maturity that commands respect. People begin to notice that she doesn't need validation, that her presence itself is powerful enough to make waves in friends. Hips. Silence becomes a boundary. Where she once felt compelled to answer every call, text, or message immediately, you start expecting more from yourself. You raise your standards naturally. And once your identity shifts, your behavior follows automatically. You don't need willpower when something feels aligned with who you believe you are. Consistency also protects you from burnout. People who chase massive leaps often crash because they demand too much too fast. 1% respects sustainability. It understands that progress must fit into your real life, not an ideal version of it. You don't need perfect days, you need repeatable ones. You need habits that survive stress, boredom, and bad moods. Small improvements are resilient. They bend without breaking, and over time they create strength that doesn't disappear when life gets chaotic. The most dangerous thing about 1% improvement is that it's invisible until it isn't. For weeks, nothing seems to change. For months, the results are subtle. And that's where most people quit. But those who stay consistent cross a threshold where effort and results finally meet. Suddenly, the work feels lighter. The habits feel automatic. The progress feels exponential. That's not luck. That's compound growth revealing itself. And once you experience that shift, you realize the truth. Small actions were never small. They were building a future that only discipline could unlock. Your life is a mirror of what you tolerate, not what you hope for, not what you talk about, what you allow to stay. Every standard you accept, consciously or unconsciously, sets the ceiling for your future. If you tolerate disorganization, your life feels chaotic. If you tolerate broken promises to yourself, your confidence erodes. If you tolerate people draining your energy, your focus disappears. Standards are not about perfection, they're about self-respect. And self-respect is not a feeling, it's a practice. You practice it every time you decide what is acceptable and what is not. Most people think standards are about rules, but they're really about identity. When you raise your standards, you're not just changing behavior, you're declaring who you are. You're saying, this is how I operate now. And that declaration carries weight. The world responds differently to someone who knows their own rules. You speak differently. You move with intention. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. High standards create clarity, and clarity eliminates hesitation. When you know what you stand for, decisions become faster and easier because the line is already drawn. Lower standards feel comfortable in the moment, but they come with a hidden cost. They quietly steal your future. Skipping the workout today becomes skipping discipline tomorrow. Letting one excuse slide becomes a pattern of avoidance. Over time, you don't just lose progress, you lose trust in yourself. And self-trust is everything. Without it, even simple goals feel heavy. Raising your standards interrupts that cycle. It creates friction against your old habits. At first, it feels uncomfortable, even lonely. But that discomfort is a signal that you're growing the version of you that's settled. Standards must be lived daily, not announced publicly. They show up in how you manage your time, how you speak to yourself, how you handle pressure. Do you do what you said you would do when no one is checking? Do you clean up the messes you create, or do you avoid them? Do you prepare, or do you hope things work out? High standards are quiet but consistent. They don't seek validation. They demand alignment. And alignment creates a sense of inner stability that no external praise can replace. Raising your standards also changes the people and environments you allow into your life. You stop chasing approval. You stop entertaining chaos. You stop negotiating your values for convenience. This isn't about cutting people off aggressively. It's about choosing intentionally. When your standards rise, some relationships naturally fall away, not out of anger, but out of mismatch. And that's not loss, that's space being created for growth, space for focus, space for peace, space for people and opportunities that match the level you're stepping into. The moment you truly raise your standards, excuses lose their power. You no longer ask, "Can I get away with this?" You ask, "Does this align with who I am becoming?" That question changes everything. It shifts you from reacting to leading your own life. You stop living by default and start living by design. And once that shift happens, progress becomes inevitable. Not because life gets easier, but because you refuse to lower the bar to meet your weaknesses. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid pain, not realizing that avoidance is the very thing keeping them stuck. They design their days around comfort, convenience, and emotional safety, then wonder why nothing changes. But growth has never lived in comfort. Every meaningful transformation comes with friction. Pain is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a signal that something is changing. Muscles tear before they grow stronger. Confidence is built after discomfort, not before it. When you understand this, pain stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like information. It tells you you're moving beyond the limits of who you used to be. Stagnation, on the other hand, is silent and deceptive. It feels safe. It feels familiar. It doesn't scream at you the way pain does. It whispers. It convinces you that tomorrow is a better time, that staying the same is reasonable, that you've got time. And slowly, without dramatic failure, years pass. The real danger is not struggling, it's settling. Because stagnation robs you of urgency. It dulls your edge. It makes average feel acceptable. And once average feels acceptable, greatness starts to feel unrealistic. That's how dreams die. N-O-T with resistance but with neglect. Pain forces you to be present. It demands attention. When something is uncomfortable, you can't sleepwalk through it. You have to engage, you have to decide. That's why disciplined people don't run from discomfort. They use it. They understand that every hard moment is a vote for the future version of themselves. Waking up early when your body wants rest, speaking up when silence would be easier, staying consistent when progress feels slow. These moments don't feel good in the moment, but they pay dividends later. Pain is temporary, but the strength it builds stays. There is a difference between destructive pain and constructive pain, and wisdom is knowing which one you're facing. Destructive pain comes from ignoring problems, avoiding responsibility, and betraying your own standards. Constructive pain comes from effort, growth, and resistance against your lower instincts. One drains you, the other sharpens you. The problem is most people confuse the two. They avoid the short-term discomfort of discipline and end up living with the long-term pain of regret. Regret is heavier, it's quieter, but it lasts longer. And unlike effort, regret gives you nothing in return. When you stop fearing pain, you stop being controlled by it. You stop making decisions based on comfort and start making them based on alignment. You realize that confidence doesn't come from success. It comes from surviving difficulty. Every time you do something hard, you collect evidence that you can handle more than you thought. That evidence builds resilience, and resilience changes how you see challenges. What used to intimidate you now feels familiar. Not easy, but familiar. And familiarity breeds courage. You stop asking, "What if this hurts?" and start asking, "What will it cost me if I don't act?" The most empowered people are not those who live pain-free lives. They are the ones who choose their pain intentionally. They choose the pain of effort over the pain of regret, the pain of discipline over the pain of disappointment, the pain of growth over the pain of staying the same. Because every path has discomfort, there is no pain-free option. The only choice is which pain you're willing to carry. One builds your future, the other erodes it slowly. And once you truly understand that, you stop running from discomfort and start walking straight through it. Every thought you think has a source. It didn't appear out of nowhere. It came from something you saw, something you heard, something you allowed into your environment. And most people never stop to question that. They wake up, scroll, listen, absorb, react, and then wonder why their mind feels scattered, weak, unfocused. Your inputs are not neutral. They are shaping how you think, how you feel, and how you act. Whether you're intentional or not, you are being trained every single day. The only question is, who's doing the training? You or everything around you? Your brain is constantly king for patterns. It becomes what it consumes. If you feed it chaos, it produces anxiety. If you feed it distraction, it produces restlessness. If you feed it negativity, it produces doubt. You cannot expect clarity when your mind is filled with noise. You cannot expect confidence when your mental diet is fear-based, cynical, and shallow. And yet, people spend hours consuming content that weakens them, then try to flip a switch and perform at a high level. That doesn't work. Peak performance is built upstream, in what you allow into your mind, long before the moment of action arrives. Entertainment is not harmless when it dominates your attention. There is a difference between rest and escape. Rest restores you. Escape numbs you. When every free moment is filled with endless scrolling, gossip, outrage, and comparison, your mind never recovers. It stays overstimulated and underdeveloped. Focus becomes harder. Silence becomes uncomfortable. Deep work feels impossible. This isn't an accident, it's conditioning. And if you don't interrupt it, you will live at the mercy of whatever is loudest, fastest, and easiest to consume. The strongest minds are protected minds. They don't allow everything access. They curate. They choose. They understand that what they hear repeatedly becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar becomes believable. That's why you must be ruthless with what you listen to when you're tired, what you watch when you're bored. She now responds thoughtfully, if at all. She no longer engages in endless explanations to avoid conflict or hurt feelings. Instead, she trusts that her intentions are clear to those who truly matter. And for those who don't understand, silence communicates more truth than any argument could. It tells the world she values her peace more than she values approval, and those who cannot respect that will not linger. In romantic relationships, this silence transforms dynamics profoundly. The girl who used to justify her emotions, plead for attention, or overanalyze every gesture now observes, listens, and trusts her intuition. She no longer chases explanations from those who are inconsistent or indifferent. When confronted with doubt or misunderstanding, she doesn't react with defensiveness. Instead, she steps back, allowing her silence to hold weight. And in that quiet, she reveals something undeniable. Her value cannot be debated, her worth cannot be questioned, and her power cannot be diminished by uncertainty. Even in social settings, her silence commands influence. She no longer feels the need to fill every conversation with words, to assert herself constantly, or to seek validation through humor or charm. She participates when it matters, and she withdraws when it does not. People notice it. They sense that she is choosing her energy carefully, that she speaks when it counts, and that what she leaves unsaid carries more authority than anything she could ever vocalize. Her silence becomes magnetic, drawing attention and curiosity. Her silence also becomes a mirror for others. People project their own assumptions, fears, and judgments into it. They try to interpret it, to read her motives, to understand her boundaries. And while they speculate, she bears forward, unbothered, focused, and unshakable. She understands that she doesn't owe anyone an explanation because her life is hers to lead and her choices are hers to make. In letting go of constant justification, she elevates herself to a level of respect and autonomy that no words could ever grant. At home, silence becomes a refuge. She no longer feels compelled to argue over every opinion, to prove her point to family members, or to justify her life choices. She sits quietly, observes, and lets her calm confidence radiate. Her energy is not scattered in defensive conversations. It is focused on growth, self-improvement, and inner peace. Those who recognize this begin to treat her differently, not with indifference but with respect. They realize that her silence is not emptiness but power. Even in moments of personal struggle, she discovers that silence heals. She stops narrating her pain to the world. She doesn't overshare to be comforted or understood. She allows herself to feel fully, to process privately, and to emerge stronger. Her silence is her sanctuary, her mind her ally, and her self-respect the ultimate declaration. People notice her composure, her resilience, and her quiet confidence, and they are inspired. They realize that she doesn't need to explain herself to live authentically. And in witnessing that, they learn the most powerful lesson, that true strength is not in the noise you make, but in the quiet you maintain while the world spins around you. Even small daily acts, like pausing before reacting to criticism, choosing not to comment on gossip, or simply not filling every silence with chatter, become demonstrations of her power. People begin to associate her presence with clarity, calmness, and authority. They learn that she does not engage in trivial battles because she is saving her energy for what truly matters. And in this quiet power, she becomes unstoppable. There comes a moment in a woman's life when she stops settling for less than she deserves. For years, she tolerated behaviors, conversations, and relationships that dimmed her light because she believed compromise was necessary, because she feared being alone, because she thought acceptance required lowering her standards. But one day, a shift occurs. She recognizes that her worth is non-negotiable, her time is priceless, her energy is sacred, and from that realization, her standards rise naturally and unapologetically. In daily life, this is visible in the smallest decisions. She no longer stays in friendships that drain her without giving in return. The friend who only calls when she needs a favor or disappears when she needs support, she lets go. She doesn't argue, she doesn't beg, she doesn't explain. She simply steps back, and those who truly belong in her life remain. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. Weak connections fall away because they were never built to endure the strength she now embodies. At work, this shift transforms her trajectory. She no longer accepts jobs, projects, or partnerships that undervalue her skills. She stops saying yes to every request for fear of missing out. Instead, she evaluates, she prioritizes, she chooses alignment over convenience. Her standards set the tone for how others treat her. Colleagues who once overlooked her contributions begin to notice her presence because she no longer settles for invisibility. Opportunities that align with her ambitions naturally gravitate toward her because she is no longer scattered in pursuit of anything that comes her way. In romantic relationships, the impact is profound. She stops tolerating indifference, inconsistency, or disrespect. She no longer compromises her peace to avoid confrontation. She recognizes that love cannot flourish where stand. Odds are ignored. When she raises her expectations, the relationships that were weak or one-sided fall away. Some people may resist, some may leave, and some may try to convince her to lower her guard, but she stands firm. Her rising standards are not just about them, they are about her. They are about honoring her heart, her mind, and her vision for the life she deserves. Even in casual social circles, the effect is unmistakable. She no longer attends gatherings to simply be seen or to maintain appearances. She no longer endures small talk that feels empty or forces connections that feel forced. She surrounds herself with people who elevate her, challenge her, and celebrate her. She chooses quality over quantity. Her presence becomes a filter. Those who thrive in her energy stay. Those who drain it fade. She discovers that when she values herself, the universe values her too. In her daily routines, her elevated standards are reflected in self-care. She no longer compromises on rest, nutrition, or mental health. She invests in her body, her mind, and her spirit as if they are priceless commodities. Because they are. She stops comparing herself to others or adhering to societal expectations that limit her potential. She sets boundaries that protect her peace, and through this discipline, her life aligns with her vision. Weak habits and negative influences naturally fall away because they cannot coexist with the high standards she now holds for herself. Her standards also rise in communication. She no longer tolerates gossip, manipulation, or emotional drain. Conversations are purposeful, honest, and respectful. She no longer entertains drama for attention or validation. When someone crosses a line, she addresses it with grace or simply walks away. Her words carry weight because she speaks from a place of clarity, not fear. People begin to recognize that her energy is OT disposable, and they adjust, or they leave. And in this process, she learns the invaluable truth that alignment is far more important than approval. Even in moments of challenge, Her elevated standards protect her. When confronted with criticism, judgment, or betrayal, she does not lower herself to prove worth. She stands tall, maintains integrity, and continues forward. She recognizes that people who fail to meet her standards were never meant to walk with her in the path she is creating. Life begins to operate with a natural filter. Weak connections, relationships, opportunities, habits fall away without her having to force the change. The universe has a way of honoring clarity and strength, and by raising her standards, she allows that natural alignment to take place. Her rising standards are not arrogance, they are self-respect. They are a declaration that she will no longer sacrifice peace, purpose, or joy for temporary comfort or hollow validation. She becomes intentional with her energy, her choices, and her commitments. And as weak connections drift away, space is created for relationships, opportunities, and experiences that honor her growth, her vision, and her value. She discovers that the life she desires was never about forcing people to stay. It was about allowing only what resonates with her truth to remain. There is a magnetic shift that happens when a woman stops running after everything and everyone and instead focuses on becoming the best version of herself. For years, she believed that success and recognition came from chasing opportunities, chasing validation, chasing approval. She was exhausted, constantly reaching, constantly stretching, constantly hoping. But one day she realizes something profound. When she aligns with her purpose and focuses on her growth, opportunities begin to seek her out instead of the other way around. In daily life, this begins with mindset. She stops comparing herself to others and stops measuring her worth against someone else's timeline. Instead of worrying about how quickly doors open, she works on sharpening her skills, expanding her knowledge, and deepening her confidence. She invests her time where it matters, in learning, in discipline, and in self-care. While others chase trends or short-term validation, she builds long-term value, and value has a way of attracting attention effortlessly. At work, this shift becomes tangible. The woman who once volunteered for every task to be noticed now focuses on high-impact contributions. She doesn't raise her hand for recognition. She raises her standards. She masters her craft, delivers results, and builds credibility quietly but consistently. Soon, leaders and collaborators begin to notice her. Projects, promotions, and mentorships come knocking, not because she begged for them, but because her competence and dedication are undeniable. Opportunity follows excellence, and she has become the living proof of this principle. In social circles, her energy attracts people with aligned visions. She no longer spends time networking out of desperation or attending events just to be seen. Instead, she invests in genuine connections, in conversations that inspire growth, in relationships that elevate her spirit. When her energy is purposeful, those who resonate naturally gravitate toward her. Invitations, collaborations, and introductions come effortlessly because people sense that she is a woman of intention and they want to be around someone who operates on that level. Even in romantic relationships, she experiences this magnetism. The girl who once chased attention or sought validation now focuses on her own growth, her own happiness, and her own vision for life. She invests in experiences that fulfill her, in passions that ignite her, and in a life that feels abundant. And in doing so, she becomes irresistible. Not because she tries to be, but because she is fully herself. People who are aligned with her energy come to her, and those who are not simply fade away. She understands that attraction follows authenticity. In daily routines, she embodies this principle through her discipline and priorities. She doesn't overextend herself trying to be everywhere at once. She chooses her commitments carefully, invests in skills that matter, and protects her mental and emotional energy. The result is a life of clarity and direction. When she shows up in the world, it is with confidence, presence, and focus, and that energy acts as a beacon for opportunities. People want to work with someone whose life is intentional because intention breeds results. Her digital and social presence reflects this magnetic pull as well. She shares insights, progress, and accomplishments without seeking validation. She posts not for likes, but to inspire, to connect, to express. And people respond. Not because she asks for attention, but because she radiates authenticity, expertise, and energy. Offers, collaborations, and opportunities begin to come naturally because she is no longer chasing them. She is living in alignment, and alignment is magnetic. Even her mindset toward challenges changes. She no longer fears rejection or sees setbacks as failure. Instead, she treats every challenge as growth and every delay as preparation. That patience and perseverance radiate to the world, signaling that she is ready when the right opportunities arrive. She doesn't push doors open that aren't meant for her. She allows the right doors to find her. And when they do, she is fully prepared, fully capable, and fully deserving. In essence, she becomes a force of attraction because her energy is consistent, her focus is sharp, and her vision is clear. She no longer chases recognition, success, or approval. She creates value, embodies purpose, and cultivates mastery. And in doing so, the universe responds. The right people, projects, and paths begin to present themselves naturally. She understands that chasing never equals fulfillment, but living with intention, aligning with purpose, and prioritizing growth ensures that opportunities are not only attracted, they are inevitable. There is a quiet revolution that occurs when a woman learns to stand on her own emotionally. For years, she may have relied on others to validate her feelings, to reassure her worth, to calm her fears. She believed love meant dependence, that approval was survival, and that her happiness was tied to someone else's actions or opinions. She poured her energy into being needed, into being wanted, into being understood. And one day she realizes a truth so powerful it changes everything. True freedom begins when she becomes emotionally independent. In daily life, this independence starts small. She stops waiting for people to text her back to feel valued. She no longer equates silence with rejection or attention with love. She trusts her own presence and acknowledges her own worth. Where she once panicked at the thought of being alone, she now finds solace in her own company. She cultivates joy that does not rely on others. She learns to celebrate her accomplishments privately, to soothe her fears personally, and to honor her feelings without needing permission. That internal validation becomes her superpower. In relationships, emotional independence transforms her dynamics profoundly. She no longer needs constant affirmation from partners to feel secure. She doesn't overanalyze pauses, obsess over tone, or seek explanations for every action. She knows her feelings are valid because she validates them herself. When ICT arises, she responds with calm, not desperation. She communicates clearly, stands firm in her boundaries, and allows space for the other person's choices without compromising her peace. That independence shifts power dynamics, and it commands respect because she is no longer tethered to insecurity. At work, emotional independence becomes a source of confidence and clarity. She doesn't depend on colleagues' approval to measure her competence. She doesn't tie her self-esteem to recognition or promotions. She works with dedication because she values excellence, not applause. When faced with criticism, she absorbs what is useful and discards what is irrelevant. She doesn't argue to be liked, nor does she overcompensate to avoid conflict. Her focus is on growth, impact, and mastery. People notice the calm authority that comes from self-reliance, and it opens doors that chasing never could. In friendships, she sets a standard that only the emotionally mature can meet. She no longer endures relationships that are draining, manipulative, or one-sided. She loves fully but does not cling desperately. She supports her friends but does not lose herself in their chaos. She speaks up when necessary, withdraws when needed, and does not tolerate disrespect or disregard. Her independence allows her to maintain balance, keeping her energy intact while nurturing meaningful bonds. Weak connections naturally fade, while authentic ones deepen. Her mornings and routines are also transformed. She starts the day grounded in self-affirmation. She journals, meditates, or practices gratitude to stabilize her emotions from within. She chooses her environment, her thoughts, and her actions consciously. She doesn't rely on external stimuli for happiness or reassurance. She becomes the source of her own joy. In doing so, she discovers a peace that no external chaos can disrupt. Even when life tests her with disappointment or rejection, she meets it with resilience and calm. In everyday interactions, her emotional independence is unmistakable. She doesn't react impulsively to judgment or criticism. She doesn't bend to soothe others' discomfort at her expense. She listens, she observes, she responds thoughtfully, or she walks away when it serves her peace. Her reactions are intentional, not compulsive. She no longer feels compelled to defend herself unnecessarily because she knows her value. People notice the difference. They feel the quiet strength radiating from her, the unshakable core that cannot be moved by chaos, drama, or opinion. Even in moments of love or heartbreak, independence is her anchor. She grieves privately, she processes fully, and she emerges wiser and stronger. She doesn't rely on someone else to fix her pain or to validate her experience. She allows herself to feel, to heal, and to grow fully within her own control. That emotional ownership creates a magnetic aura. People respect the woman who does not collapse at setbacks, who does not beg for attention, who does not barter her peace for approval. Her emotional independence also frees her to pursue her dreams without hesitation. She makes decisions confidently because she trusts her intuition. She takes risks because she can handle outcomes without panic. She navigates life's uncertainties because her stability is internal, not borrowed. That freedom allows her to rise, to grow, and to become unstoppable. She understands that no relationship, no success, no circumstance